Hi, this is Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about Spherion. And Spherion is it is a short story. It's an articulated story that I have written. And what do I mean by an articulated story? So it is similar to a short story, but as an articulated story, it's different, okay? So let me explain what it is. So the core of the Spherion story is Evangeline and Miles. And Evangeline and Miles are a brother and sister. They're college age, and they are specifically, they're engaged in a specific activity, okay? And what is that activity? So Evangeline is an artist, and Miles is a coder, okay? Well, Evangeline has all these ideas in her head, and she's always drawing these characters and scribbling down little ideas for stories, but she almost never finishes them, okay? And she just keeps building these creating these drawings, and Miles will talk to her about her drawing. They'll get together for lunch or dinner, and he'll ask questions, and she'll show him the drawings, and he'll ask questions. And she always has answers for what this character is, what kind of world they live in. But she never finishes the stories, right? And, or rarely does, right? And so at that point, Miles says, I really like your art. I think it's really cool. Gives me lots of ideas. I love all these worlds you're building. It's a shame that the only people who see these, the only people who benefit from are me at our lunches and our dinners, right? And so Evangeline goes, yeah, it's kind of a shame. And Miles then says, okay, listen, I'm going to build this for you. So at that point, Miles actually goes and he codes her characters and her worlds into several small bespoke video games. Now, Miles is a coder, right? But video games are difficult to deploy, okay? And the biggest reason why is you need servers generally to deploy them on, right? And so at that point, especially for some of these worlds that are a little bit larger in scale, and he also wants to allow multiple people to play at the same time. Miles is a big fan of MMORPGs, right? So what Miles does is he creates several small bespoke MMORPGs, and then he essentially steals corporate servers to host these games. And then him and Evangeline then decide by invitation only who's going to get to play these games. And the number is as low as 1 all the way up to as high as 50, okay? And so they send out the link and people get to play these as long as they're hosted, right? So Miles and Evangeline are really enjoying this. Miles is super excited about it. It's going really well. The worlds really start to bless some of the players. The players are super excited, right? But all of this is like just it's a small project by Miles and Evangeline, right? It's fairly large in scope, but sure enough, because they don't, this isn't a permanent job, right? One of their services found, and they lose one of these bespoke worlds, right? So Miles is really sad because a lot of the work that he spent in there has gotten wasted, and Evangeline is sad because because she knows that this meant a lot to Miles. She was excited about it too, especially when she started to see how these specially chosen players were responding, right? And so so she's upset. Well, the next day, she gets a text from an anonymous text saying, hey, I want to meet with you at this public place for lunch, right? And I know this is an unusual request. That's why I'm putting it in this public place, but it has to do with your bespoke video games. Please come. I really think you'll be happy that you came. So Evangeline is very adventurous. Miles is not, right? And so she goes, right? Well, she meets this gentleman by the name of Derek. Derek just gives his name, and then he puts a tablet on the table. And at that point, Derek, the tablet begins to speak, right? And Derek, his only job was just to bring this tablet so that Evangeline can hear it. So they're outside. It's a kind of a nicer restaurant, but they're out on like the veranda, and they have this conversation. And so Evangeline has this conversation with a voice through this tablet, right? So it's just, there's no image of who the person is or anything like that. And so she just has this conversation with an anonymous being on the other end of this tablet's line, right? And she tries to ask Derek questions, and he shuts down all conversation and directs her to just listen to the voice coming through the tablet, right? The voice on the tablet identifies itself as Shard Shark. And Shard Shark says, listen, I know what you guys are doing. I know that you stole some corporate servers, and I know all about your bespoke video games that are invitation only, right? And I think it's awesome. And I think it's terrible that you guys lost your server for that one bespoke game. So here's the deal. You and your brother, this very week, I want you, Evangeline, to quit college, and I want your brother to move out of your parents' house, and he can go wherever he wants. And here's what I'm offering. Here's my ask, and here is what I'm offering. So actually, and I shouldn't say him, there's no indication of gender for Shard Shark. There's no indication of anything. Like, there's just a voice talking out of a tablet, right? So at that point, Shard Shark says, my offer is, actually the ask is, you will continue to build these bespoke video games. You will have complete control of who gets to play them. Everything you did will go forward. The only thing that will change is you will have a legal host. We will host all of these on servers that I will supply, right? I will have, and then Shard Shark says, I will have read access to every video game, period, end of sentence, right? That's my entire ask. You continue to create your bespoke video games. You maintain the ones you have. I get read access on everything. Now, what you get in return is I'm going to make this a full-time job for you. You and your brother will both be paid $9,999 in cash every single week, okay? In addition to that, I will pay all your rent, and I will buy each one of you a vehicle. Also, if you want to travel once a month, I will pay for 1 week of travel per month. And in addition to that, once every season, I will give a boon, which is one unnamed, so a non-cash favor, which you will request, and then I will try everything I can to deliver that within reason, okay? So that's the full offer. That's the ask. Evangeline then says, what about my sister? And Shard Shark says, your sister? Do you mean Chun Hua? And she says, yes. And so Miles and Evangeline have a sister who's adopted from China, and she's in junior high. And so Evangeline presses Shard Shark for a for a package for her sister, which is going to be a promotion for Evangeline's father, and also the Shard Shark agrees to pay for any school that Chunhua, any college that Chunhua is accepted into when she's ready to go to college. So Evangeline has secured a package. She's happy with the package that is being offered to her and Miles. She doesn't ask for any more there. She gets a package for her sister, her adopted sister, Chunhua, and then she says, "Okay, bet, that's it. I'm in. I will deal with Miles. I will get him on board, right?" And then she says, and then she forwards a link to Shard Shark and says, "Here's the link to these are not called bespoke video games. We don't call them bespoke video games. We call them Spherions. They're individual worlds, and me and Miles call them Spherions. Here is the Spherion Navigator." Okay, so she sends the Spherion Navigator to Shard Shark. Okay, now in the and that's why it's an articulated story. Okay, so it's essentially it's a frame story, but it actually multiplies in many, many stories. So this is the story of Evangeline and Miles creating video games. Each one of those video games is its own world. And I, the author, am creating these Spherions as individual worlds that are packaged as video games that Evangeline and Miles are creating, okay? And they're in different states. So the state can be all the way down to a title, to a, and these are all states that Evangeline has these worlds in. So she may only have a title for this world that she wants to create. She may have a paragraph of description. And then also, there's a point where she is given, after that, a detailed world is when she has handed it over to Miles, right? Oh, I forgot one thing. So Shard Shark, not only is he offering, I keep saying he, not only is Shard Shark offering this very lucrative package, but Shard Shark is also paying for for any teams that they need to work on these worlds, right? So they can get different teams to do additional artwork, or to do character design, or mecha design, or whatever design they need, in addition to supplement Evangeline's work. And she drives all of that. She drives all of the ideation for these worlds, right? And Miles can get additional coding teams. So they now have pretty much, massive resources to build these Spherions, which are bespoke video games, which are sent out to invitation-only small player lists, right? Now, these Spherions, I'll give you 3 examples, all right? So right now, there's more than this in the articulated story, but Spherion Apparition Apprehender. That is the story of Ebenezer Scrooge, traditional Christmas Carol, right? But when Jacob Marley comes to him, he is interrupted. Actually, Jacob Marley is interrupted by 3 apparition apprehenders who break through the window and put Jacob Marley into an apparition ampule, and then tell Ebenezer Scrooge, hey, not only did we stop this apparition from haunting you, but this apparition, we had been studying it for weeks, and it was prepared this very night to bring 3 additional apparitions to your abode to haunt you further, right? So it is essentially, it is the story of people who capture ghosts in the Christmas Carol world, in Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol world. That's one Spherion. Another Spherion is American Witch Ace. Okay, American Witch Ace is a story of an America that has 75,000 American witches. Okay, and they are all in an American Witch organization, and they all keep themselves secret, right? Well, in Kennett Square, there's this new mushroom that's being grown that makes their spells go from permanent to actually change from permanent to from being temporary to permanent, right? So there's a massive kerfuffle. There's a battle. That's the best way to put it. There's a battle among the American witches. Okay. And by the way, the name of the American Witch organization is REWN, REWN. Okay, and so this American Witch organization, it has 5 separate aviaries. All these aviaries send people to Kennett Square to get these mushrooms. The mushrooms are, actually really, what's the best way to say it? Oh yeah, they're incredibly valuable. And 17 witches die in one night in this battle, right? And a whole bunch of mushrooms get split up, and the council and at that point, every single one of the 5 aviaries, which are like essentially the factions for REWN, the different divisions within the major American Witch organization, they all send representatives to a council, and they all say, "Whoa, this is terrible. We've been around since the early 1700s, and only 9 witches have died in combat with each other in the entire history of our organization. And in one night, 17 witches have died. We need to do something." So they do. They decide that 1 year from that all of the mushrooms will be given up to one witch. She'll keep them for a year, and no one will procure any more of these mushrooms. And in 1 year, they're going to have the Ozark Witch Wars. And the Ozark Witch Wars are going to be each aviary sending 13 witches, and those witches are going to battle in the Ozarks. And the outcome of that battle will determine who gets what. And so pretty much this entire mushroom debacle is going to be decided by the winners of this American Witch War, right? And so for 1 year, all the aviaries are going to prepare. Well, the structure that is decided for this American Witch War is a traditional war. There's going to be land, sea, and air forces. Sea, of course, there'll be lakes because the Ozarks are lakes. But they said that essentially, there'll be witches who can fly on their brooms, there'll be witches who have to remain on the ground, and there'll be witches who have to remain in boats. And each group can split up their forces any way they wish, okay? So what they've done is they've created a proxy battle to take care of their real problem, right? So at that point, that's when the story actually kicks in. There's a young witch who is very low in hierarchy, and she gets drafted onto one of the aviary teams, and the reason she's drafted is not because she's a good flyer or anything like that, or a good fighter or a good sailor or anything like that, or that she's particularly strong in her magic. Her grandfather was an American ace. He was a fighter pilot that had downed five fighters in 5 different fighters in, he had flown with American aces in the Vietnam War, right? So he is specifically an American Vietnam War fighter pilot who flew with an ace in that battle. So he's experienced, he's incredibly experienced at aerial combat, right? In fighter jets. So this young witch then has to go to her grandfather, tasked by another witch, and she says, "Listen, go to your grandfather and learn from him how to win aerial battles, because we want to structure our flight wing around your grandfather's basic combat maneuver knowledge, right? And we think that this is going to win. Like, our ability to fly our brooms the way actual American aces flew in the Vietnam War that's going to help us, and that will win us this combat, right?" And so then the story happens is that happens in the main American Witch Ace story is this witch having to talk to her grandfather and get a whole bunch of information about BCMs, basic combat maneuvers, right? And how to fly as a combat pilot, right? While keeping the fact that she's a witch a secret from her grandfather, which he does not know at this point. And in addition to that, once she starts doing this, her grandfather doesn't really fully, what's the word I'm looking for? Participate. He doesn't cooperate, right? What he does is he actually, says that he wants to teach her how to be a leader as well, right? And then she has issues with leading the team. So that's American Witch Ace. And that's just 2 of the Spherions that are in the story. There's more Spherions that are in the story. And because it's an articulated story, as Evangeline and Miles continue to create new Spherions, those are added to the articulated story. So it's really unusual, and it's free. And I'll put the link right down below. And you should check it out when you get a chance. Thank you.